Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 41. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who continues to listen to the show, likes, shares, and comments. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. I also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that puts the athlete first and is actively working towards providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus has quickly evolved into a global brand symbolizing quality and trust. Their ever-growing product range is used by top athletes around the world at the highest level of competition, and every single Cerberus Strength product has been designed with performance in mind, with the highest attention to detail. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strength conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Kyle Lillie. Kyle Lillie is an assistant track and field coach at Sacramento State University, working with the throwers. He began his coaching career at Division III Husson University in Maine in 2015, and soon after Mesa Community College in Arizona before arriving at his current position at Sac State in 2018. A two-time junior college All-American, Lillie claimed the outdoor title and placed second in indoors and shot put in 2012 before making his way to Arizona State University. At ASU, he was an NCAA qualifier in the hammer throw, placing as high as fifth place in the Pac-12 Outdoor Championships in 2015, and currently sits fourth all-time at ASU with a 210-foot, 2-inch hammer throw. After college, he looked to make the U.S. Olympic trials for the 2016 Olympics, but after falling just short, began his career in Highland Games, where he quickly went from amateur status to professional in 2018. After capturing two amateur world championship titles, Lillie continues to compete on the professional circuit in Highland Games all across the United States and the world. In addition, he competes in both Strongman and various natural stone challenges. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Kyle Lillie. What's going on, everybody? Today, I am joined by Coach, fellow Highland Games athlete, and professional Highland Games athlete, Coach Kyle Lillie. What's going on today, man?
Oh, nothing, man. Just getting that summer work in, prepping for my next games at the end of July, and getting ready for the start of next track season as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, summer's the big time to kind of get all the preparations in. Highland Games, that's the meat and potatoes of the good tournaments. We kind of talked about it a little bit before we started rolling. They're a little few and far between at the moment, like compared to normal years where you're going weekend. So
Most years I probably get, if I only stay in the States, I probably get anywhere from like 12 to 15, 16 games in a summer. If I go to Scotland for a couple weeks, I'll get 9 to 10 while I'm over there as well. But this year I've had one so far, and I'll have one more in July, and then maybe 2 in September. So this is a very, very sparse year.
This is brutal. Yeah, I've had one, and it was supposed to be a strongman competition, and it wasn't. It was and I just turned it into a Highland Games. Mm-hmm. I just hopped over the fence, and I was like, I'm going to go throw instead. And that's the only thing I've done since the pandemic.
Yeah, it's brutal, man. In the start of the pandemic, I had one games early. There's usually a Highland Games at the Queen Mary, in Southern California, and that's in February. I was able to get that in. Then everything shut down, and the rest of the season went down the drain. I did my first Strongman show last December.
Yeah, Winter Warrior.
Winter Warrior. Yep. And then I was able to make it out to Texas in May for a Highland Games, and it was a good games. I started out the day well, and then it started to downpour, and it made the hammers kind of tough. It made the caber impossible. It made the sheaf impossible. So The rest of the day was kind of a struggle, but
That's good prep for Scotland though, because
yeah.
if you only throw like on the West Coast, you usually don't see inclement weather.
Yeah. And yeah, Scotland's always damp and cold. So it doesn't
Nice.
matter what time of year you're there.
Awesome. Hey, so we already kind of jumped the gun, but let's get into it a little bit of your backstory and everything. What eventually led you into professional Highland Games and throwing, and what kind of like sports did you actually play growing up? How'd you first get involved in everything?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, my first, I mean, I did, the T-ball and the flag football, stuff like that, like every kid does. But the first thing I started taking somewhat seriously was actually skateboarding. And this is when I was like a young teen. And then I got into high school and I was tall. I was already like 6'2", in high school. And the football coach got a hold of me and asked me to play. And, I was breaking skateboards like every week because I was getting too big. So I decided to try football, and football was great. I made, junior varsity as a freshman, and then varsity captain as a sophomore all the way through my senior year. And then I did track as well, starting my sophomore year. Got second in the state in the shot put, and decided to go to junior college, first to play football at Glendale Community College in Arizona. And then after, it was actually my third shoulder surgery. So I had 2 shoulder surgeries in high school, 1 shoulder surgery my freshman year in college. And after that, I just decided that, football wasn't going to be the sport for me anymore. And I went to the track coach and said, hey, I was pretty good at this in high school. Can I give it a shot here? And a year and a half later, I ended up winning the junior college national championship in the shot put. And that got me to Arizona State, where I competed in the shot put and the hammer, and made it to the national finals in the hammer. And when I went to graduate, I realized, one, I got a degree in criminal justice, and I really didn't want to do anything in criminal justice by that point. And the only real thing that I loved was throwing. So I decided to get into coaching, and that took me to my first job, which was in Bangor, Maine. It was at Husson University, a small Division III. And I was actually still trying to throw the hammer. I was kind of coaching myself, trying to qualify for Olympic trials in 2016. Didn't qualify like most of us who are attempting to go do. But I ended up, meeting a gentleman by the name of Will Barron. He was also coaching at another school in the area. He saw me throwing, and he asked if I had any interest in the Highland Games. And at the time, I really didn't, honestly. I was trying to focus on the hammer. And when I realized that wasn't going to pan out, I decided to give it a try. And he invited me over to his house. He had most of the implements. We had to improvise a few of them. But I did my first games 2016, August 2016. It was the main Highland Games, and I was hooked from there. And I gave up the hammer, and I decided to put all of my athletic focus into the Highland Games. So that's it's kind of a long path, but the amateur path was fun. I was only amateur for like a year and a half, 2 years before I was able to make the jump into the pro class. So my throwing background, in college definitely helped me adjust to the Highland Games a lot quicker than like the average person that just jumps into the Highland Games. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
No, that's awesome. That's kind of cool to hear, like all the different things that you did and it's sequenced in. And it's cool to see like go from skateboarding and then you start adding in football, and then you start playing football and you add in track, and then like they kind of just feed into each other. And eventually it led you to Highland Games, and it was the perfect like combination of a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Some dexterity and skill from skateboarding, some brute strength from football, and then you still get to kind of throw a hammer, even if it's completely different than collegiate hammer.
Yeah, and I'll still pick up the hammer, and I still train with a shot put for the stones for Highland Games, but I'll still pick up a Olympic hammer every once in a while and just have some fun, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to you, because a lot of people they beat their head against a wall trying to play one sport that they really want to, and you felt you were more open to trying new things, and then you found one that you've been able to really excel in. Obviously, like some people just spend their whole life in the amateurs for Highland Games, and that's fine, but like you came right out of the gun and won 2 championships in the amateur level. And like professional Highland Games, for people that don't know, can you explain a little bit like how you define professional in Highland Games? And like, because it's very different, even though I would say you're professionals, but in what most people would say, like hockey professionals and like Major League Baseball professionals, like it's kind of solidified a little bit more.
Yeah. And, a lot of sports, there's contracts involved, and, either, you get signed by someone or you get a pro card, like in Strongman. There really isn't anything like that in the Highland Games at this point. It's really you really just kind of declare you're a pro, which sounds kind of lame and barbaric but you also have to have the connections and the skill. So any Joe Schmo can say, oh yeah, I'm a pro Highland Games guy, but if your marks aren't up to standard and the AD or the games directors don't really know who you are, you're not going to get invites. And at the pro level, you have to, all professional games are invite only. You can't just sign up for it, at least in the States. So as an amateur, you have to get your marks up to what would be considered pro level distances. And then you also have to kind of make your rounds as an amateur. You have to go to some of the bigger games. You might have to travel a little bit just to meet games directors and say, hey, I'm coming up in the amateur class. My numbers are getting better. I'm looking at going pro in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. So then you're on their radar. So when your numbers are actually at a level that could, be deemed professional, then you can start emailing these games directors saying, hey, I'm planning on turning pro in 2022, and I would love, to have a chance to compete at your games. Well, yada, 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 all that good stuff. But without doing that, you're never going to get an invite. So like I said, it's a little lame when you literally just say, yeah, I'm a pro, but
yeah.
And that works because there are some smaller, more local type pro games in some parts of the country that, they don't have a lot of money, so they can't bring in people from all across the country. And some mid to high level amateurs that wouldn't make it at like the top level pros might still get some professional invites because it's more of like a regional thing. But if you're trying to compete at like the big games across the country, like the Pleasantons and the Loons and the Celtics and stuff like that, you have to travel to those games and get your marks up and really kind of make yourself known. And I think Instagram and Facebook have really helped that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, making yourself known is big. I mean, I've thrown with a lot of people. Obviously, we're in different categories and weight classes, thank God. But there are a lot of very good, like high A's, like and amateurs that are out there. But there is like a bit of showmanship to it. And people come as a spectacle. Like we are part of a festival for Highland Games. Like it's not, most places you're not going except for like Loon and a few other places like that are super big, like Celtic probably as well, Pleasanton to some degree. Like people are coming to watch throwing. They're coming to watch the Highland Games because it's fixed in the festival. But if you're kind of not a good crowd pleaser, you're kind of boring or you're standoffish, like you're not going to get a lot of invites.
Yeah. And I say this all the time. It's a hybrid between like strongman competition and like the WWE, where you have to be, strong and powerful and throw really well, but you also have to be able to entertain a crowd. You have to be able to get people to like you, because the more people like you, the more they cheer, the more they want to see you next year, the more invites you're going to get.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so kind of touching on it, like as you were being an athlete and you kind of found Highland Games, at the same time, you were also finding like your coaching footing too. Mm-hmm. So can you touch on a little bit like how that initially got your attraction? Like, I know you said you didn't want to really use your degree too much from Arizona State and you kind of found coaching, but from like first year coaching to now your current position as an assistant at Sacramento State, like how have you kind of changed your approach as a coach, and how is like you continuing to be able to compete like helped your coaching? Has it kind of fueled that fire a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, anytime, when you can stay motivated yourself, it's easy to help motivate athletes as well. I find people that they don't have any type of outside motivations other than, their coaching career. They might struggle with that, especially as the athletes get younger and younger and you get older and older. But when I was first coming out of college, I tried to do everything like my college coach did. Dave Dumble, who's one of the best throws coaches in the history of the NCAA. But I tried to, copy our lifting program, copy our throw schedule. I was trying to be a carbon copy of Coach Dumble. And it wasn't for another, like probably after my first couple of years, that I kind of realized that I needed to kind of find my own niche. And, through talking to other coaches and just working with athletes, I was able to finally mold my own program into what it is today. And, it's still changing every day and it's still evolving every day. But just that track of, starting out trying to be a carbon copy and flowing into your own system. It's hard, but at the same time, I think, being able to evolve it with, my own athletics, especially those first couple of years when I was trying to, compete in the hammer, I changed things to work for myself that I didn't change for athletes right away. And then when I figured out what other things might work, I might start to add it into my track and field program as well. So it evolved quite a bit from 2015 to today.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that was the same way, like when I got in strength conditioning, and it was really just, I wanted to emulate my mentors and honestly just copy everything they were doing, because I sat there and you don't know much outside of your bubble. Like
Exactly.
you can look and see like what other people are successful, but when you see someone hands-on, like in person, their success, like all you want to do is kind of copy it. And then you start to realize that it's more than just that program. It's how that coach interacts with people. It's how their demeanor, like the little tweaks they make on it. It's not just like the paper or the calendar. And you start to slowly, like you said, add those things in and take some of your own coaching cues from your training. And that's why it's awesome, I think, for coaches that continue to train, because we do the same thing repetitively over and over constantly, but something on one day, like some slight little tweak there can make the world of difference with an athlete. And if we're constantly working on ourselves, we're constantly motivated, then it's easier to help someone else. Exactly like you said. I love that. So kind of now, like with your program and everything, like you talked about, like some of the big mistakes that you kind of gone into, like, do you still kind of take some of your Highland Games, like the dispersed, like sort of training, and put it with your collegiate athletes? Because some athletes come in as throwers and they're throwing one discipline. But I know a lot of schools, like Ryan Vieira is a huge example, like all their athletes threw every single implement.
Yeah.
Do you see a benefit from your throwers coming in and kind of getting their hands on multiple different things, like, or introduced to the weight room and stuff like that, so they can either excel at their best implement or kind of broaden their athleticism a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of my throwers, almost all of them, do shot, disc, and hammer, and that's by design. I want them to, one, get the experience with the hammer if they never did, but a lot of cues with the discus can transfer over to the rotational shot put and vice versa, and it just adds to their, like you said, their athleticism, their body awareness. Training in the weight room is all the same as well, so that way I don't really develop anybody to be specifically one thing until maybe their fourth or fifth year. if they get to their 4th or 5th year and then, it's looking like, okay, their shot put is really taking off and their hammer and discus are average to below average. Well, then, that last year or maybe 2, we'll put some heavy focus into that one event. But for the most part, in the weight room, out in the field, everything is geared to just making them the best athletes that I can make instead of the best shot putter or the best discus thrower. Just, I want them to be the best athletes that they can be.
Right. No, I love that. I mean, we kind of both know, like in the strength conditioning world and then like in the throws world, like at the collegiate setting, like a lot of collegiate throwing coaches like are heavily either leading the strength conditioning portion for their athletes, or they're just heavily involved with either the programming or the direction and the flow of everything. How does your guys' program kind of evolve? Are you super involved with it? And then like on another note too, like how do you start to specifically kind of shift those training qualities to be more throwing specific? Like I know like hips off for the bench for like shot putters, like a lot of people in collegiate style don't deadlift because you never start from that static position. So what do you kind of like add to the program, and how much of it are you kind of in control of?
Yeah, I'm very involved. I used to be the strength coach for the throwers. We did get a strength conditioning coach named Sparks, Austin Sparks. And ever since he came in, he's been fantastic. And, I made the conscious decision to hand the throwers over to him. And we still work very close together. We'll go over programs together and just make sure that everything kind of grooves, with what they're doing out in the field versus what they're doing in the weight room. But he really writes the programming. Like I said, I'm still involved. I still, make sure everything's, kosher there, but, he's been doing a fantastic job getting them to be, like I said, the best athletes that they can be. And as far as specific things, like I said, we're trying to be the best athletes. Hips off for the bench, take it or leave it. I mean, I have always been a hips off person because yes, we do use our legs, we do use our hips. Like especially when we're throwing shot, that was something that was taught to me by Coach Dumble at ASU. But I'm not going to tell somebody they have to do that. Same like the deadlift. We deadlift all the time. And that's just because it makes you a better athlete, a better strength athlete. We change the variation. We might do, conventional deadlift. We might do some sumo deadlift. We might do trap bar deadlift, just changing it up a little bit. But, we still deadlift all the time. And, I hear a lot of people talk about that as well. Like, the risk versus the reward with deadlift, a lot of people can get hurt. And my argument with that is, well, if you teach it right, they're not going to get hurt. It's the people that, and a lot of times it's no fault to their own. If you got some strength coaches that, they're dealing with 60 athletes in a weight room, teaching everybody a deadlift is almost impossible. But I'm working with 10 to 12. We can, and most of them are going to be returners. We might get a couple freshmen in. So then I only really have to work with 2-3 freshmen. So it's, it's a lot more manageable with, my sport than, teaching football players to deadlift or,
Right.
Things like that. So.
No, that's cool to see, because I think when you have that ability to like have a good relationship with your strength coach, like as a sport coach, then you guys can bounce ideas off of it. And maybe he's pretty adamant about something, you're pretty adamant about something, and being able to kind of blend the two together is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know in my experience, and I'm sure every strength coach could say this, like the more that we're speaking to a sport coach that can kind of speak our language and understand what training is. And because you'll get coaches that'll come in and be like, they associate the weight room with soreness, pain, and injuries.
Yeah.
And I mean, the intent that you go to practice, like you're telling me that if you go to soccer practice and you kick the ball around as a warm up, like that's the same as them coming into the weight room and stretching. You can't just associate a location or a person with pain.
Yeah.
And it's good to be on the same page with a coach.
Yeah. And when I got into coaching, right away, I got a strength conditioning certification. I took over the throwers after the first year of me being at Husson. And when I was at MCC for a year, I was also the head strength conditioning coach for the whole college. So I worked with football, I worked with basketball, volleyball, soccer, track and field. So I worked with all those sports. So I understand the strength and conditioning profession from both ends, so it's really easy for me to work with Coach Sparks. And, we're pretty on the same page 99% of the time. I don't think I've ever had a real argument with him about anything, to the point that I've actually started to transition my training to him. So he started programming for me about 3 months ago, and it's been going fantastic. And again, it just takes more off of my plate that I can put into my own training as far as throwing, and then my own coaching as far as throwing. I can put more focus into recruiting. I can put more focus into being out in the field with athletes, instead of having to write programs and be in the weight room and all that stuff. So It kind of frees me up to do other things that are just as, if not more important, than the weight room.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've talked to a bunch of people, and like coaches specifically, that talk about once they've had the ability to pass off their program, their training's got so much better.
Yeah.
Because you're filtering it through someone else and you're not putting your own biases into it.
Exactly.
And it frees up so much extra space. Because I don't know if you were like me, but I just sat there and would overthink it, because I would try to make the perfect thing for myself. Because like, oh, well, I'm going to miss this day, so I need to change this. Like, no one in their right mind would make a program and do that to you. So why would you do it to yourself?
Yeah. And, and just like every person, there's exercises you don't like doing, so you're never going to put them in for yourself. You'll find a way to substitute it or supplement it. And that's never a true substitute, and like a perfect example of that was deadlift at first. When I was at ASU, we never deadlifted. I didn't deadlift my athletes at first. And then I started a couple of years ago, I started working with Ryan Whiting as my strength coach, and he started programming a ton of deadlifting. And, that's where it kind of evolved from there. And then when I got into Strongman, I really started to see the benefits of deadlift as I started to deadlift more. My athleticism started to get better, my strength levels in my squat and my, my sandbag over bar, things like that, those all started to skyrocket. So, I started to see how important the deadlift was. And now whether I take, if Coach Sparks leave or I leave or whatever happens, the rest of my career, if I take over the throwers again, deadlift's going to be a staple of my program now. And it wasn't at first because of my biases,
Right. Yeah. So kind of touching on that, like your own like training has evolved a lot over your career. Obviously, like depends on the junior college level. Like if you had a strength coach, sometimes you might be doing on your own. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then
my strength coach at the junior college level was our football coach, who had really no idea what he was doing. And so I really wouldn't say I got into any real type of strength conditioning training until I got to ASU. And when I was at Glendale for track, I was hardly ever in the weight room.
Right.
I was only ever in there for football. And then when I quit football, at first he wouldn't let me back in because I quit the team. And then when I actually signed with ASU over that summer, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're fine. You can come in now." I'm like, "All right, cool. Thanks."
Thanks. Yeah. So, I mean, going from there, basically you were doing it your own, or you had a football coach, which is basically babysitting a PE class.
Yeah.
Which this is exactly what it was. And then like taking your first like job, trying to like do Olympic trials on your own. Like that's a whole different beast. You're doing your own thing. Like you're coming in under your own flag. Like you're not associated with anyone anymore. And then now you have a full coach. But how have you been able to kind of balance this? Because Highland Games is 9 events. Strongman is random. Natural stones are just rocks in the ground that are hard to find, and you have to drive to them and GPS locate them. So how are you able to kind of balance all those things and does it kind of take away from one or the other, or does one always precede everything else? Like, does professional Highland Games always beat out Strongman and Natural Stones, or how do you kind of adjust different seasons and stuff like that?
Yeah, Highland Games is the top, for me. I'm never gonna go choose to do, a strongman show or anything else over a professional Highland Games event. That being said, I really don't have an off season now because, my Highland Games season goes from May till September, October area. And then right after that, I'll start training I'm going to do Winter Warrior again this year in December. So I'll start training for that. And then once I'm done with that, I'll probably take, 2 weeks off, and then I'll start getting ready for the next season because hopefully the Queen Mary will be back up and running in February. So I was kind of talking about it with my girlfriend, Katie, who's also a Highland Games and Strongman competitor. Just how I have to try and blend this, competing in Strongman and competing in Highland Games and not wear myself out. And to me, it's really become, what I do in the weight room. I don't put a lot of emphasis on specifics in the weight room anymore. It's general, most of it's a general GPP unless I'm training specifically for, like Winter Warrior. But it's really about getting my fitness levels up. My strength levels are good enough, if not, good. So I can, as long as I can maintain, maybe build a little bit, but maintain my strength levels, keep my fitness levels up, that'll help with my Highland Games 100%. Strength levels always going to need to keep going up if I want to keep pursuing Strongman, because the numbers in Strongman are starting to get ridiculous now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Highland Games, to me, the hardest part is getting my technical stuff for each event, because 9 events is really hard to train for, especially out here in the heat during the summer. I'm in the weight room 4 or 5 days a week, and then I'm trying to throw 4 or 5 days a week, and trying to squeeze 9 events into that. It's kind of tough. So some events start to lag, and then, I'll back off of one event to start building that one up, and then that one will start to lag. So it's really finding the balance. I still haven't quite, nailed that balance down yet. I need to talk to some decathlete coaches to try and figure that out. But yeah, that's the struggle for me right now. The weight room that's easy to manage, but getting my actual technical work in the Highland Games has been tough.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example, like heptathletes. And I mean, that's what Highland Games really is. It's trying to be really good at 9 things, not great at one, and then shitty at another, because that doesn't win at all.
Yeah, and I mean, part of me, there's ego involved in it too. I want to be up with, some of the guys that are breaking world records, and I know I can. So I might put a little more focus into this event because I want to be up with them, but then my hammers will start to drop or whatever it is. And then that makes, winning competitions really hard. I may be up there trying to compete for a world record in one event, but, I get third in a competition because my hammers are so bad. So I'm trying to get my ego out of the way a little bit and not try and be up at those super, super, super high levels in one event, and really just try and make my game a complete game to where, I can come in, take first and second in every event, and, hopefully win with that.
Yeah, that's a good point, making it a complete game, because there's a lot of strategy to it too. Mm-hmm. I mean, being outside for 8 hours or whatever it is and trying to stay away from the beer cart until like at least caber's done.
Yeah, until weight over bar. Then you can start drinking. You can drink during weight over bar. That's fine.
All right. Well, the lightweights sometimes have to start with the weight over bar just because we get the shaft usually, but so I can't start drinking in event 1. But
yeah, that's true.
No, but that's good, because I really wanted to talk to you about all those things, because obviously finding a balance between 2 sports that you're trying to be highly successful at. One, you're professional, and then competing in the weight class that you compete in at Strongman. Like, it's no joke for that stuff, but and the weights keep going up every year. So you have to find a balance when strength is really important, when technique is really important during season, when you have to do all these events and some stuff has to take a background. And I kind of did the same thing. The weight room became so simple. It's like, can I throw a med ball? Can I sprint? Like, can I squat fast? And then like, if my strength stays about the same, then I can manage Highland Games. And then when Strongman comes around and I know what competition is, I can train for those 5 events. But I mean, if you're really professional in Strongman, you're training more than 9 events. You're training for whatever random thing someone's going to throw at you. So if you try to spin 50 plates at once, you're going to crash and burn. So
yeah, at that level, I think, overall general just strength increases are, your best bet. And then as you get closer to specific competitions, you can start working, more specific events.
Right.
You can use strongman events as, ways to build that. Like if you want to increase your overhead press, you can do a log press or an axle press or something like that. And that's technically an event. You just do your push press with, that's what I've been doing recently, is I do my push press with a log instead of with a barbell. Just to keep, familiar with some of these strongman events.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely blend the two. Like talking about all this stuff, like you're really passionate about like being involved and competing and your own training and everything. What sort of like impact have you seen with your athletes, or even like on the road recruiting and stuff? Like does this come up in conversation? Like does this help your coaching in any way?
It does. I think mainly because I'm going through everything that they went through. I've been through everything they're going through in the past in my own college career, but I'm still going through it with them for the most part. Especially right now, Coach Sparks is writing the throwers program. He's also writing my program. They are different programs, but there's similarities, right? So I'm running through a lot of the same things they are, and they understand that. And like the COVID year, when everybody, they lost their season and yada, yada. And like, I could sit down and look at them, eye to eye and be like, a lot of coaches are going to look at this as like, I didn't lose my job. I'm still getting paid. I'm not mad. But for me personally, it was, I lost my season too. I'm in the thick of it with you guys. And I think that translates to, the athletes kind of giving a crap about things because, I work just as hard as they do for my sport, and they see that. Now in recruiting, I really don't bring it up very much unless someone else does, and then I'll talk about it, or they do, and I'll talk about it. I really try and keep my recruiting focus on, what we're doing at the school, what I'm doing with my athletes. And if they're interested, if they find out, because I do have an Instagram presence and stuff like that, if they find out that I do this, or if they sign and they get here and then they find out that I do it and they have questions, I'll talk about it all day. But for the most part, I try and keep the two separate until they become my athlete.
Right. No, that's good. I think that's the right approach anyway. I mean, you don't have to sit there and throw it in their face, because it looks like you're going to be splitting time with them when you do it that way. But yeah, I think it builds a ton of buy-in when we sit there and tell athletes, like, you don't want to just treat them as athletes. You want to hear their personal problems. You want to understand that like they're doing well with like their relationships and with class and everything. And when we're going through those same things, like, and we're still training and we're coaching, that's our work. Their work is being in the classroom and being able to participate in sport. Like, it shows that we're mutually doing the same thing. Like, so we understand it.
Yeah. And there are days that I don't really train in the weight room with them anymore because I found Untamed strength, and I feel my time gets spent better at Untamed. But I'll still go out and I'll throw with them every once in a while. Like on a shot put day, if I need to work my stones, I'll go out and I'll throw with them. And then they can see me going through a lot of the same struggles they are. I can have a crappy day too. So I'll go out and I'll go through some of the same technical struggles, or my legs aren't working, or I'm not feeling, poppy or anything like that, So, they can see that I understand everything that they're going through. Because I'm still going through it on a day-to-day basis. And like you said, that does create a lot of buy-in on the program. And I think it has, especially here. It did a little bit at Husson, but the Division III athlete is a little different. It did a little bit at MCC, but again, the junior college athletes are a little different, except for like the top, 3%. But being at Division I and seeing, all these athletes are here to be the best shot put, discus, hammer throwers that they can be and compete at a really, really high level. And, seeing, their coach who has competed at the high level in college, who's currently competing at a high level in another sport, and going through that day-to-day grind, they believe everything, that we're working towards, because I'm doing it too.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more emphasis, and there's a lot more depth to what you're saying, because you still currentrently live and breathe in it. And there's a big connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hard part. I always wondered, I mean, I still got a long ways before, I don't know if I'll still be competing forever, but to see that disconnect, I mean, and you see the disconnect already with like when you get older, like, and freshmen come in and they listen to crazy music. You don't know anything, any of these like social media crazes and stuff like that. I just don't pay attention to any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But to still be connected from the barbell, or still be connected from what our training is and that competitive spirit, I think that's enough to really like at least establish a good relationship and rapport.
Yeah. And I also have, like I said, I don't have a huge Instagram presence, but I have an Instagram presence. I have recently started a TikTok presence. That's one I still don't understand. I'm trying to figure that one out. But, and that does help, when these athletes come in, that I can relate to them. And I'm not that much older than a lot of them. At this point, a freshman comes in, I'm, 10, 11 years older, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot when you have, some coaches in the NCAA are 60, 70 years old. So, that definitely does help, relate to athletes when they come in, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I know that definitely changes. I've seen it like with some of my supervisors and like our directors. It changes over time for sure. And that's like one thing I always look to be kind of prepared for, because I'm not going to be able to compete forever. I'm not going to be similar age to them where like we get along with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah.
Hey, but kind of touching on this, like all your coaching and getting involved with the athletes, like on the field, have you been able to take away any like super big lessons from just being with them day to day or coaching that kind of help you with your own training, or maybe just like motivate you to continue training?
Yeah. Anytime I see them go through a grinder, anytime, we go through a super hard conditioning week, or, that this weight training session just buried them, and they get up and they keep going, they keep fighting, anytime I see that, that just kind of grinds at my own gears, where I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I stay, because it's really easy, especially when you're training by yourself. I do have Katie, who is kind of my training partner, but there are days that, because my schedule is very different than hers, there are days I have to go throw by myself. There are days I have to go lift by myself. And, keeping a lot of that in the back of my head of, my athletes just went through a grinder, a couple of hours ago, I need to keep, have that same mentality going into my training session. And it does help keep me fresh, because there are some days when, obviously, you train, everybody that trains has it. There are days you don't want to do anything. You get to the weight room and you're like, this 5x5 looks like it's going to suck. I really don't want to do it. But, watching my athletes, go through those things, either the day before or whatever, or just remembering, a couple weeks ago, they did this same thing and they all powered through it and looked fantastic doing it. So I need to do that as well. So it definitely helps keep me fresh, for sure.
Definitely, especially when you're probably training by yourself a lot of times. I mean, I'm jealous that you get to go to Untamed, but I mean, access to everything, to have Alan there and all the other people, like it's a very motivating place to be able to train. And also it's nice to not always be like tapped on the shoulder when you're at school.
Yeah.
and your athletes come by.
Yeah, that is one thing. When I found Untamed, I didn't just find a gym; I found a culture. And finding Untamed solid, because I've always been interested in strongman, but I never actually tried it. So when I got there, I was able to give it a try. So it introduced me to a new sport. It introduced me to a culture of strength that I didn't know about beforehand, because all of my training before this had been in some type of collegiate weight room. And going to a gym that has very high level strongmen, very, very high level power lifters, and just see that strength culture from a new perspective was very eye-opening to me. And I made a lot of really good friends at Untamed. Alan is fantastic. He's helped me a ton along the way. And it's easily the best place to train. I feel very lucky that I've been able to, I got a job in Sacramento that allowed me to train at Untamed. And I'm going to, wherever I go the rest of my life, I'm going to, feel lucky that I was able to train here for however long I get to.
Right. Yeah. Find a place. I mean, wherever your next coaching staff takes you, or if you stay there for a while, like find a place that emulates that same type of culture. That's huge. I mean, people don't realize it, but the atmosphere you're in and like the people that you surround yourself when you're training on days that you don't want to, or there's things that you don't want to do, or it's just, like you said, you're going through the meat grinder on a day, to have those teammates by your side, or at Untamed, like have like a professional, like 53 kilo, like female, like ripping 400-pound deadlifts next to you, or firing you guys up and getting ready for different competition stuff. That stuff is awesome. And those places are few and far between, but when you find one, it's awesome to latch on to. When we all compete in individual sports or have our own agendas and life outside of just training, we're not all, I mean, your professional career can't pay for where you live and subsidize everything. So it's a nice paying hobby.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that was one thing, with the pandemic, the loss of games did hurt me a little bit on the financial aspect of it. Because we don't make a lot of money, but it does help. And so that's one thing that makes me kind of excited to get a normal year. This year I kind of took it as, I just want to compete because I hadn't competed in a year. So I don't care if I make money this year. I just want to throw.
Right.
All I ask is that my marks count. I don't, because there were a couple games I did last year that were, amateur backyard games that, my marks, they don't count. They don't even go into NASCA or any other database or whatever. But that's the only thing I ask is, like, if I can get a competition where my marks count, that's all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, bring the steel tape out. I was not driving to a backyard games. Sorry, guys. It's like, if I'm throwing, it better be something. And for something. I
mean, there's a group in the area that, I've practiced with every once in a while. They have like Sunday practices. I'll go out and I'll throw with them every once in a while. And, they put on these backyard games, and I thought, what the heck? I get to put my kilt back on and go out and throw in a field for some fun. And it was a great time, and it was a great way to spend a weekend mid-pandemic where, we literally weren't doing anything. But now that things are finally starting to somewhat get back to normal, I need my marks to count for something.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, so since you've been heavily involved in the collegiate style throwers, and you're a Highland Games athlete, and you've been around a lot of like those professionals that have been successful as well as yourself, are there any like characteristics that are different if you were making like an ideal Highland Games athlete versus an ideal thrower? I know, specifics aside, like hammer or shot put, like, I mean, just looking at the Olympics, they're built different, but a general thrower versus like a general Highland Game thrower.
I mean, if you're talking like a high level Highland Game thrower versus a high level, college athlete, I think they could be the same person. And you look at the current crop of, let's just say, top 10 pros, probably 8 of them have some sort of relatively high level Division I throwing background. So as you know, I really don't think there's much of a difference. The skill sets kind of lend to each other so well that that's why most of them are former college throwers, because the body awareness, the strength that you've gained, the explosiveness that you've gained, most of them are naturally built for it. Not all of them, but most of them are 6 whatever, and 280, 300 pounds, at least at the top level. And those are a lot of the same characteristics you look at a lot of the pro throwers or high level throwers as well. So I could say that they could be the same person.
Right. Yeah, you kind of that's a good segue for like college athletes that, I mean, either want to try to go for the Olympic trials, or Highland Games is a great like alternative, and some people find even more success in it.
Oh yeah, we joke about it all the time. Is we're just washed up college throwers that found a niche, and that niche happens to be we get to compete at a high level, we get to make some money for it, and we get to have a beer with our friends at the end of the day, and we get to travel. I mean, you can't really ask much more than that when you've got some people that all they want to do is try and make the trials or Olympics, whatever it is, and they work on that for 4 years, and then they fail, and then we got to go another 4 years. Not saying that's bad, because that's how you get some of the best athletes in the world, but if you're looking for something to do on the weekend, get to travel a little bit, get to still throw, the Highland Games is the absolute best thing you can do.
For sure. What would do you have any advice for anybody like maybe that's never thrown before, like to really just get involved in the Highland Games? I mean, you talked about it when you first kind of got introduced, like improvised implements. I'd love to hear what other kind of weird stuff that you had to come with, because I had kettlebells. I had a kettlebell with some U-bolts with some electrical tape, and it didn't end well. So,
I mean, I've when I first got into it, I went over to that gentleman, Will Barron's house, and he had, weights and hammers and all that stuff. He did not have a sheath, and he wanted to show me sheath. So we put a bunch of random things in an old duffel bag and stuck the pitchfork through the duffel bag and took some pulls with that. That was kind of entertaining. I've made hammers with the little, 10-pound plates, and I've made a weight with some straps and a kettlebell. And I think for the person that's trying to get into it, before trying to make implements and probably hurt yourself, or try and spend a bunch of money and buy implements, because to buy actual well-made implements, they're not cheap. Sign up for a games, whether that's novice class or C class or open class, whatever they have. Just sign up for a games and go give it a try, especially if they have a novice class, because they'll walk you through every event. They'll teach you some technical things. They'll actually show you how to toss a caber instead of just jump in and try and emulate what everyone else is doing. So that would be my advice, is just go do it. And then you'll find out really quick, is this something I like? Is this something that I have potential at? Because when I got into it, that was what I did. I had 4 hours of random practice at Will's house, and I just showed up to an open competition, and there were some things that went really well just because of my natural throwing background. There were things that I really struggled with, but I knew right away that I fell in love with this sport. This was something that I wanted to keep doing. And, most of the time you'll know right away if it's something you want to keep trying, or if you want to, that was fun, but, I'll go to powerlifting or something else that you want to give it a try. So yeah, my advice is just go do it.
Right. I love that. Yeah. I mean, the first one, I went to one games, I think it was Monterey, and I was just kind of feeling it out. And me and my girlfriend had just went to just kind of see the festival and stuff. And they're like, oh, the novice is tomorrow. And I was like, oh, we can't stay for this. So I signed up for the next one right after that. But like walk down. Everybody's so welcoming and inviting, like Strongman community, like Highland Games community, like they're holding stuff over the fence so kids can like pick it up and everything. Like the crowd is involved.
Yep.
Like the same as like Untamed Strength and everything. Like it's a competitive atmosphere, but it's also a very welcoming culture. It's everybody's on the same team, and that's the most fun thing about it. Is like I know collegiate throwing for the most part is like that too. You get some stuck up people, but most people are just looking to beat themselves. So and push each other.
Yeah, and I think the culture, well, one about, collegiate throwing, I think that culture has really started to shift to a very welcoming atmosphere. I know like when I was in college and a little before, there was not a lot, but there was some of like, this is the person that they're my rival in my conference or whatever, I don't like them. Specifically only because they throw around the same distance as I do. Has nothing to do with them as a person. They could be awesome. But that was just the way, we kind of looked at it. And I think that one comes from football. But I think that culture is starting to change because of things like, the older athletes showing on, social media and stuff that, they are friends, seeing, like Reese Hoffa and Ryan Whiting and Tom Walsh all training together, stuff like that has really started to help that culture change. And, the Highland Games from the second I was in it was always, everybody wants everybody to do well. Strongman has been the same way. My first competition, everything was going well. It looked like I was going to win it. And then there was a couple of events that, this other guy, edged me out in, and he ended up winning the whole competition. And, obviously I wanted to win the competition, but I was like, man, dude, that dude did awesome, and now we're friends. So, that's part of the reason that these sports have really started to draw me in, is just because I've made so many awesome friendships out of this sport that, they're friends that I might only see a few weekends a year, but every time I see them, we have a great time, so, these sports can definitely bring that to you.
No doubt. I mean, that's how we got introduced. Obviously, like Joe over at Fresno, like you guys know each other pretty well. Like you guys came out to a Highland Games, and then we both competed at Winter Warrior at the same time. So like you're not too far away from everybody. And I think that's the coolest thing about it. Most people are cheering each other on and competing with each other at the same time as against each other. And I mean, a rising tide raises all ships. And I think that just drives up. The crowd is behind it more when you're pushing yourself as hard as possible. And then as soon as you're dog tired, you're cheering on the next guy.
Yeah.
It's a culture that people want to be a part of. It's a community of people that want to get more involved. And that's why, like, it seems like the novice class is always so huge. And some people trickle out, but then some people like get invested and continue to do it forever. I mean, the Highlands Games has like a 70 plus like class.
Oh yeah.
Like there's old guys throwing bombs.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Men and women. And, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with, being in the C class forever. And if you're having fun with it and you're happy and that's just how you want to spend your weekends, by all means, I absolutely love that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm such a competitive person that the second I found out that there was a professional class in the Highland Games, I was like, I want to be there. But if you want to just hang out and throw, that's awesome. That's even better. You get to have a good time and drink some beer and throw some things and wear a kilt. What's better than that?
Yeah, for sure. I think you found the right one now, so that's cool to hear. But hey, so we end the show like any good training session. We've got a finisher, and I'll give you one extra throw at the end for overtime.
All right.
We'll set a field record, but you can go as quick as possible, and we'll go rapid fire, or you could take your time. But you ready?
Sounds good.
All right. First one I got for you: biggest influence in throwing, like throws coaching, track and field or Highland Games, and favorite Highland Games athlete.
Biggest influence is definitely Coach Dumble. I'll still call him for advice. He's definitely a mentor for sure. Favorite current Highland Games athlete?
Or past?
That's tough. That's really, really tough. I think one of my favorites for sure has to be Dan Tennyson. If you don't know who Dan was, he retired after the end of 2019, but we started about the same time, and he went pro a year before I did, and I got to compete against him when we were both amateurs, and right away we became friends. And seeing him throw the way he threw as an amateur, I was like, okay, that's where I want to be. And then he went pro, and then I rose to the top of the amateur ranks. And then when I went pro, him and I were, for the last year of his competition, him and I were like clones. We would go to games and compete against each other, and I would throw stone and beat him by an inch, and then we would throw weight, and then he would beat me by an inch, and I would win this overall games by a point or two, and then we go to the next games and he would win this games by a point or two. And so it was a fun battle back and forth between me and Dan. So I definitely gonna have to say Dan Tennyson for sure.
What's his nickname's Evil Dan?
Evil Dan, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the story behind that is there's another Highland Games athlete by the name of Dan McKim, who's probably one of the best Highland Games athletes ever. So Dan McKim was always the good guy. So I think when Dan Tennyson came in and he wanted to be the not the opposite, but the alter ego of Dan McKim. So he made his name Evil Dan.
I like it. That's awesome. Hey, so I know you're busy, you're training and competing and you're coaching all at the same time, but what are some of your outside hobbies when you're not in the weight room or not on the field?
Recently, over the last year, I've really gotten into golf. I golf once or twice a week right now because I have the time. During the season, I don't do it that much, but that's something I've been spending a lot of time and money doing. I also, I play video games. I play Warzone a lot. So those are my two hobbies that I do outside of track.
Nice. So if you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing? Would you actually be using your degree? And if not Highland Games or Strongman or natural stone lifting, if I took those three away from you, what would be the next sport to try to pursue?
Well, first, the next sport I try to pursue only because it's what I'm doing a lot is golf. And that's one thing that has really drawn me to golf over the pandemic was obviously, golf courses were closed, but I couldn't golf too much, but it was the technical aspect of golf. Kind of scratched that itch that I have, during a year, I'm throwing a lot and coaching myself technically in the throws. I'm coaching every day, different technical stuff. And when all that was taken away for a year, I had like this itch of, diving into just technical work that I needed to scratch. And my golf swing ended up becoming that itch. So what was the other question? I'm sorry.
So if you weren't coaching, what do you think
right.
you would be doing as a profession?
That's tough. Probably have something to do with my criminal justice degree, just because I have the degree and it's a career that you can, make a living off of. I really don't know. I really don't have a backup plan. I'm kind of all in on track and field. Part of me has always liked the marketing aspect of things, whether that's, marketing for a business or even for a university or a sports team or something like that. That has always fascinated me, especially, when I started working with companies like for sponsorship and stuff and getting to see the marketing side of it. That became really an interest of mine, but I only got that interest because of the Highland Games. So who knows?
I gotcha. Hey, so if you were setting up an ideal training day, and this might be different for the weight room or for throwing, so you could pick either or, what is your go-to training music or PR song, and what is that post-training meal look like?
When it comes to training music, I like it really heavy. My PR songs currently, over the last year, I've used Solway Firth by Slipknot quite a bit when I'm going for a big lift. I've also used Hail the Apocalypse by Avatar. Given the state of the world in 2020, felt like it fit every time I was going for a big lift. When I throw, I like it to be a little more relaxed. I don't really listen to heavy music a lot when I throw. It's and by relaxed, it's still some type of rock music, but it's not heavy metal. It's a little more punk or stuff like that. Kind of trying to stay loose.
What's that meal look like? What's the best go-to post PR meal?
The best go-to meal is carne asada fries.
Ooh.
From wherever you can get them. I get them from a place up here called California Burrito. But carne asada fries are definitely my go-to post PR meal.
Next time I'm in Sac, I'm gonna have to go there.
Heck yeah.
Last one I got for you. So either favorite under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory of yours?
Well, favorite coaching memory, I think was actually this past year. We were at our conference championship, and I had a hammer thrower who came in ranked first in the conference, and he was very close to the school record in the hammer. And first throw was terrible. I'll just say it. His PR was about 63, 64 meters, and he threw like 55 meters. It was bad. And then the second throw was a foul, and it was looking like he wasn't going to make it into the final. Third throw, he has a good throw, not even a PR, but a good throw that gets him into the final. And then in the final, he actually ends up on his last throw breaking the school record and winning a conference championship and kind of solidifying his qualifying for the first round of nationals. And the celebration that happened after that is going to be a memory that I'll remember for the rest of my life. So that was awesome. A lot of fun.
That's awesome. Hey, so I really appreciate you coming on today, man, and sharing that. You've done a lot of stuff. Like, obviously I enjoy watching you throw and everything. So I really like talking with you. How can people kind of get a hold of you, follow your coaching side, follow your athletic side, kind of see what competitions you got going on, and anybody interested can either come see you in person or hit you up for any questions on Highland Games?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is flower_power_HG. So flower power HG. It's just kind of a pun off my last name. I also do have a TikTok that I just started. It's the same handle there. But if you're also interested in, my coaching page, it's Hornet_throws. And you can find anything about Sac State throws there as well. Awesome. Well, like I said, Kyle, it's great to have you on, man. Hopefully in the future, we'll see each other on the field shortly. But otherwise, man, thanks again for coming on, and good luck with the rest of the Highland Games season. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Congratulations again on what you're doing. And, I look forward to seeing you again, man.
I appreciate it, man. Take care.
Have a good one.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors, Cerberus Strength. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.